I hold on to the sounds, the smells, the power of the sea. It is all that protects my sanity. It is all I have left now, all that allows me to put on a brave face for them, down here in the dark, in the very bowels of this black ship, in the very pits of perdition. My family are with me, but this is no comfort. It is a heart-wrenching agony that they experience this too. If only I could take on this hardship alone, save them from it, I would go gladly. But no, my son, my daughter, my wife, they are with me, down here in the dark. The sea, the great expanse, mighty yet gentle, life-taking, but also life-giving. For 100 generations our family had been wind whisperers. We had aided the village, we had led them at times. At others, we had only been what we are, wind whisperers. The few who can fill the sails on a calm day, the few who can slow the onrushing storm. Never stop it, but we can slow it. We were hailed, but never fawned to. Venerated, but never elevated. We had a place, but it was no more important than anyone else's. But then the Imperium came to our world. For a decade our village was left alone. We hardly knew of the changing lords, as the tithes were the same. Fish, always fish. But we managed. When we were out one day, my father was present. From the deck of his ship he pointed up to the cliffs, to a lone man standing there in the armour of the Star Warriors, but with an odd and ill-omened countenance. My father whispered on the wind to me, to us all, he said, "Be wise. Do not fill the sails now. Do not still the airs. Not while this one watches. I sense a dark cloud in his wake." We did as instructed and came to dock quietly, yet without using our skills. But it did not matter. Later that night, my father, as the head of our kind in the village, as he put it, they took him from his home, and they dragged me and the children, my wife, out to watch. The man in armour bore a sigil and started to scream in a voice under the heavens. He proclaimed us anathema. He proclaimed us open to the infestations of evil. He called us the snakes in the grass, the sharks in the seas. With that he set light to the pyre my father was atop, tied to a stake. I was held by henchmen he had in his retinue, large and ugly men, as were my family. Against these killers, no one from our village could stand. I understood their position. My wife does not. She calls them cowards, traitors to allow us to be treated so. She is just scared. We all are. We were not burnt that night, but we were herded up, put into caged wagons as he toured the coastal villages, his entourage increasing commensurate to his catch. Soon there were 70 of us wind whisperers, healers, tellers of the future, net weavers. All who had been touched by the Fae were taken. We were treated like prisoners then, but at least we were treated like semi-humans. We were fed at least. Bowls, hot food. Chance to relieve ourselves in pairs under guard. When the coast was done, we were taken inland and met by other caravans of such cages from all of the points of our small country. They had taken us all that they could find. It was not long before we came to one of their large spaceports, they called it. Metal, vast miles of metal. Things going up towards the sun and coming down out of the skies. Huge things, like ships of the air but without sails. One night a wailing went up from the camps around us, spilled into ours. At first I did not understand why, as every throat was torn with a horrifying blood-curdling lament. Then I saw it. Then I understood, as I joined them. A huge vessel, but still only a transport to a larger one above the clouds, but all in black. It seemed to be made of solid midnight. Light did not reflect from its lines, they were absorbed by them. But that is not why people wailed. As it descended, I felt a sense of foreboding so intense it was akin to the feeling one would have to seeing the end of the world, your loved ones, your home, your country, your planet, tortured to death. It was worse as it got closer, as the feeling was matched to another hole appearing in our souls. We could feel all our tethers to the world, our birthright, our life force, severed. The ship somehow cut our connection to the universe, a connection all of the whisperers, healers and tellers all feel. It was gone. Many wept, many shook, as we all could not hold up the exertion of the screaming, and as one we ceased. But the moaning and sobbing was deafening still. Over the next hours, one camp after another was shackled in chains to the vessel. Some tried to resist. They were instantly shot. Darts of sunlight came from the metal weapons of the guards, burning straight through any who showed any sign of defiance. So we trudged on board. There we were taken down into the very depths of the ship, and led out into a huge holding room. No privacy, just one huge room. On each side there were sheer sides, going up to walkways above. We were escorted there and subsequently monitored and policed by women in armor. But they were things of terror to us, crows in the dark. For their presence pained many, made all shudder at their passing. They were like wells that eat all that is thrown into them. There was nothing there. They were soulless, and the malice they exuded, the hatred. We learnt to fear them. Food was dropped on us from above, by chutes and pulleys into troughs like animals. But despite the severing of our connection to the universe, some still had dreams so potent that they intruded on others. Each day and night were the same, just eternal darkness. Then lights and food funnels, then back to the constant dark until one of the horrors walked above us and shone a light down. Madness was rife, spreading like a cancer amongst us in the dark. Screamers were dealt with. I had to do the deed myself once. He was gone. Nothing of him remained but a mouth and lungs and pain. So I ended it for him. My son and I did it as swiftly as we could. But it happened elsewhere in this large room, this dank hell. We were joined by others, and the dead were removed once in a while, as this black ship moved from world to world collecting those touched by the Fae. Kept my family about me. I watched them in the dark. We hugged, and quietly whispered songs or played memory games. At least, they were mainly grown. My son was almost a man and my daughter almost a woman. We would have found matches for them both. But finally our road ended. We were herded again to the higher decks and then out into the glaring dazzle of a planet of unnatural sizes and materials, oddly twisted and foreboding. Along one huge walkway they marched us, and as we joined the ranks from over a dozen of these transport vessels, I saw the multitudes that preceded us. There were more people on this walkway, more Fae touched than there must have been in all of Tunusht, my home country. Perhaps even all of my home world. Endless, bedraggled, starved and scared, manacled humans, all lurching in the same direction on endless chains as wide as your arm. Old chains. Chains with caked-in blood rust on them. But for a few moments we got to see the splendor of the world, the ships in the air, the golden and silvered monuments, the grandeur of the world at the centre of the Imperium. I was terrified. But I had to look cheerful for my family. I drew in a deep breath as we walked and tried to tell mild jokes, but it was in vain. For less than 10 minutes later, our chains led us down into the cavernous depths of another place. Again, all the time the female guards, never saying a word, always as cold as the grave. They flanked us and forced us on. Down we went, to tunnelled areas, lit, but dimly lit. Again, we were broken into holding areas. At least the metal of the pens was dry, unlike the ship. We slept as best we could on the ground. The next day, if it was then, we were awoken, all coupled up to more chains and led through a tunnel to a long room. On either side were people who were inspecting us in seconds, then filling in a sheet of some form. We passed one after another. Sometimes they just stared at us for a moment before giving a curt nod to move along. When we got to the end of the process, we were ordered to stand in lines at a room to the left. We did so, of course, all still attached by chains as we were. We waited for hours. We waited in silence, forever under the eye of the silent armoured women, the ones with no smiles, no presence, no joy in their soul-dead sentries whose mere presence, I believe, silenced our ears to the pulse of the galaxy. Man in priestly garb entered the room with 2 boys with him. One held his mitre, and the second held a bookstand placed on his back. He stood before the priest as he deposited a large book on the boy and flicked through it peevishly with a grimace on his face. Finally he looked at us and began. "We have threshed your flesh, sifted your minds and sorted your cells. For all can serve, but the vessel must be worthy of the task to which it is allotted." As he spoke, the women finally moved as one, and began to unchain certain people and take them away, attaching them to another chain across the room, then returning for more. The priest was a distraction. The only loud voice we had heard was not screaming in months. We stood gaping at him, and were generally unaware of what was happening until it was too late. As the soulless came from my son and daughter, the priest saw my face and locked eyes with me, taking my attention to himself. "The ones now chosen go on to a brighter future, for they are strong and fit and stable, and can be used for many tasks, can serve in many ways when they have been forged anew by the Emperor. Blessed be his name. For them the struggle goes on, but for you the struggle is over. You have passed the test, and will go on. You will be taken back into the light, to serve the most holy God Emperor and all of humanity in the finest way, to become the light itself." My son and daughter were now attached to the other chain. It was being led off. I could do nothing now, if I ever could at all. We looked at each other and I nodded and smiled, as if to say all would be well. My wife and I held hands as we waved them goodbye. Then the chain moved again, and we were drawn away. Down again we went. Down further, and the light dimmed and dimmed again, until it was pitch, and all light came from a large door at the end of this huge corridor. We trudged while being hauled along by the chain again. But to my shock, when the line came closer to the light, the ones in front started to pull back, started to try to stop the chain and to prevent themselves going through the doors. Soon the same sobbing of "No, no, not there," came from many in front of me. My wife grasped for my hand and I clutched it. We were all pulled into the light no matter what. I had no idea, till we came close enough, until we saw what was inside, until we felt the room. It was well lit, more's the pity. It was black marble of some form, but had the effect of the same material as the ship. It absorbed the light. It ate it instead of reflecting it. There were thousands of markings on the walls, all complicated, all separate. No 2 inches were left uncovered. The glyphs, they were silver and reflected the light from the orbs in the air above us, so it gave the room a look of eternity, like standing in the void amongst brilliant stars, but to a backdrop of endless night. Our chain was drawn through rings on top of black marble blocks that stood at regular intervals in a concentric swirl toward the center point of the room. We would be drawn through, and each one of us would eventually stand before one of these black blocks, but there were thousands. So I noticed that there were other doors open, and more spokes leading to the center of the room. There must be blocks for 10,000 souls or more. All Fey-touched souls. But that is not what was terrifying, intimidating as it was. It was the feel. The lines in the marble below. It had trenches in where others, so many others, had trodden this path, that it had eroded the very rock. The nearer the center of the room, the deeper the grooves forged by unshod human feet alone. The age of the room, the darkness. There was nothing here but death, something cold, and it was as if the blocks themselves wept. The lines in their marble all seemed to run downward somehow. It was like visiting a graveyard, but one that contained all of the joy of humanity. Holding hands, we steeled ourselves. I tried to turn and smile at her. Our eyes locked, and we said goodbye. We both knew. As predicted, there was a place for each of us at these obelisks, these plinths. As the last chain reached the center of the room, all of the chains went taut, and our manacles were somehow drawn to either side of the blocks by invisible power. All of us. It must have been 10,000 if it were one. At that, the doors leading into the room all closed and were bolted from the other side. None of the women were on this side of the doors. Only us Fey-touched. A breeze began to lift, as our blocks very slowly began to shrink into the ground. As they did, they pulled us into a position of being on our knees. Worse, with every inch it went down, the veins in the marble began to shine, matching the glyphs on the walls. Soon they burned so bright we were dazzled and all illuminated. The wind now picked up to buffet us and whip our ragged clothes around about our rig-thin forms. The sound of people wailing picked up to match the winds, as worms of power seemed to crackle now from our manacles and into us all. And then it began in earnest. The blocks lit one after another from the center of the room, and as they did, the person to which they were connected ended. They would lurch upwards, as if someone had a hook in the back of their mouth. They would arch their backs and whip their heads open, as one after another had a long string of wisps of light pulled from them. When it had ended, they slumped to the ground, smoking out of their eyes and mouth. Their hair was grey, their skins like corpses. Their muscles melted. Their very souls were being pulled out of their mouths and eyes into a huge cyclone of light at the center of the room. I watched my plinth light. I felt the light call to me, felt it drag on me. Agony. As the light of all of the psychers in the room then coalesced into one form in the center and lifted upwards towards the ceiling, as a single arcane orb opened in the roof of the room. The power was drawn upwards and it shot along a tight beam, up into the center of a structure made by no human hand, a structure older than the Imperium itself. And thus did the structure, the Golden Throne, convert the souls of these 10,000 people into sustaining power for the master of mankind, the most holy God Emperor. For it is known that the souls of 10,000 psychers are sacrificed to the Emperor every day. For he is the light of the Astronomicon. He is the saviour and protector of mankind. And no sacrifice in his name is too much. For without him, the human race is doomed. Welcome, gentle listener. I am Baldermort, and I wish to introduce you to the important forces, factions, and faces of the Warhammer 40k universe. I hope you can see from the initial story that this setting truly does live up to its enduring name of the grim darkness of the future. For today, we discuss possibly the most important figure in the entire setting, the ruler of the Imperium, the self-styled Master of Mankind, the God Emperor himself. This is an intensely complicated, deliciously rich, and dangerously detailed person to deal with, so it will have to be presented in consumable chunks. Hence, this entry will have a set parameter and goal. Do also please all remember that this, like most of my videos, is an introduction only. More details will need to be left out than are actually make it in. So sumptuously woven is the yarn of this central figure. But I hope to capture the quintessence of matters, as I hope I usually do. A note concerning the stories. As always, their genesis is my own addled brain, so please do know that I'm just doing my best to present an entertaining entrance to the matter, that much of the periods and actions described will be very much my own poetic interpretation of how I view matters, as there is little but bones and one paragraph extracts to which I am merely trying to bring some flesh, to make this as entrancing an experience as my meagre skills permit. They are more examples of the mood than the perfect reflections of the events because, as stated, little is known for certain. Now, the remit of this first entry is to do nothing more than go through the genesis story of the Emperor. Then we will have later entries to explore the character and activities of the Emperor more. But also, do please see this as a guided tour of how I view the Warhammer 40k universe. As with anyone else, I can be wrong. I can change my perspective when new information is revealed. So always know I expect you to see this vision as the starting point to your exploration of the universe only. You will take this first step and then move past my ramblings into your own research, your own experience, and then your own vision of the figure we discuss here today, the Emperor of Mankind. A final note, sorry about this. If this is your first time viewing one of these videos, then please know that there can be much silliness and semi-role-playing in the comments section, the devout and the devilish attempting to sway all to their cause and view of the Emperor. Just smile if you see debate, as it will surely get heated. But as long as we are all polite and remember that when all is said and done, this is a hobby, it's supposed to be a laugh, then we'll all be fine. Just keep it within limits, everyone. Emojis work to indicate a jape. And so, we get on to the meat of the matter, the Emperor of Mankind. And there is no more controversial character in the entire setting, for very good reason. Murderer, despot, liar, and tyrant are names all too swiftly thrown at the Emperor. Every bolter fired, chainsaw drawn and used. Every old woman burned for witchcraft. Every world destroyed through exterminatus. Every guardsman heaped upon the ramparts of the enemy. Every psyker fed to him every day. The Emperor is responsible, in part or in full, for every atrocity that occurs in his name. A galaxy forever aflame. But he is also the genesis of the Astronomicon, without which there would be no warp travel, which would signal an almost immediate exposure to genocide as the Imperium fractured. Something that is only now being experienced in the dark half of the Imperium, and it is causing pandemonium. He is the being that soul forges every effective and safe sanctioned psyker in the Imperium. He is the defender of the Webway Gate on Terra, without whom the very legions of the Neverborn would simply march into the Materium on Holy Terra itself. He guides his people through his holy tarot. He has suffered a never-ending agony on a life-sustaining throne, every day holding aloft the Astronomicon, and, it is said, battling the very forces of the corrupting powers, the dark gods of chaos. Enduring this for humanity, for over 10,000 years. But who is the Emperor of Mankind? Where did he come from? What is he? Holy Terror. Earth, the cradle of humanity, circa 8000 BC. Once it was almost unheard of for there to be a moot. Times had changed. This was now the third one in so many generations. My father had made the journey the last one, nigh my previous incarnation, the one before, the great moot. The call went out again from the eldest, and so it must be met if enough agreed to it. The movement of clouds to call to those who read the skies, a dream for those who did not, a message from a flame for some, a flight of birds for others. All were called, and this time there was only one calling required, for enough agreed to it, and agreed to it quickly. The times had changed. We could all tell. We all now knew. It was irrefutable. All shamans knew, and something had to be done. So we came. From every tribe, every land, every island, every mountain, every plain, we came. Some who were far across the waters of Mother Earth would join us in the dreaming, but all would come. Many moons had I travelled, we all had, years in the making for moments alone of discourse. We collected others on the way, the route known. Sometimes we waited for days and nights, but none came. We knew it was not because they would not. It was because they could not. They were gone. So we moved forever onwards, a pilgrimage of the few, but seemed to be many. For when we all met, it was a sea of tents, like a small city, with many campfires, many styles, many colours and hues, not only of robes and garments, trinkets and gems, but of skin and hair and eyes. All of the tribes of humanity were here represented, a conclave of the shaman, of each and every tribe of man. The day was for resting after the exertions of the road, to swim, to eat, to smoke, to drink, but also to laugh and scowl, shake fists and reminisce, or catch up with each other as the souls of the few blessed ones met once more. Like a carnival, its dazzling splendor lightened the mood and overawed the senses. But soon night approached, and the gathering began to become more measured, more restrained, more introspective, solemn. Time would be of the essence, and brevity and clarity of expression required, if all were to feel that they had been heard, should they wish to speak. I thought many would wish to speak this time. So we pondered, weighing our words in preparation, but none would repeat what had been said by another. All had the respect to treat the statement from any as equal to all. It was not a contest, it was a meeting of minds. But I feared this time it would be a meeting of factions, as it had been before. The best speakers of their ideologies will be deployed first. Perhaps. That is what happened at the one before the last, when I lived a previous life. But I soon found out that this time would be different. It would end being the last moot of all. In the light of day, in that city of tents and colours and noise, it had been hard to see what had happened. If you did not see someone, you expected that they were somewhere else in the mass. But we could ignore it no longer. As I looked around the bowl, there was a third less than the last time I had attended. I was shocked to the core. I had hoped that many would be attending via the dreaming, but when the tally of those who had come via the astral was made, our eyes were accustomed to seeing this plane, the Sea of Souls. We realized the horror. A full third of us were gone, in only 2 generations, in only 2 reincarnations. A hush fell over the gathering as the shocking truth was so starkly and abundantly clear to all. The silence was broken by the second, a tall man of a local tribe. He was the second eldest, and thus the host. "We have been called here by the eldest of us all, the elder, as we have been twice before. But now perhaps we should heed that which before we may have taken lightly." He turned and bowed, and there he was, still the eldest. He had been so for the last 3 meetings. Eldest of the first I attended, where he voiced his concerns. He had kept holding on to this life, inhabiting a rotting corpse that was all bone and no sinew. How it must have bruised and diminished his soul to continue it this way. Yet he had. As he slowly rose from sitting, leaning on his stick all the way through, swaying more to keep balance than to gain attention, the combination was still hypnotic.
Twice before have I said this, but it is now the last time, for we have no more of it, no more time.
Many, many moons ago now, I had a dream of prophecy. I saw the present as it is, and the future as it could be, and I was afeard. For dark things have awoken in the river of souls, the other planes, a malevolence and malice and a murderous hate. In smaller parts they presently skulk across the veil, taking a soul here, a soul there, in dreams or dream walking. But this is only the beginning. For one day soon they will slowly coalesce. Like tiny bugs of light, they will combine to become great stars of searing might. These denizens, these forces, were not created by us. Their seed was planted eons ago across the greater sea of souls. But somehow it is humanity, our tribes, all of our people, that give them most sustenance. Our prides and fears and hates and loves and wars draw their eye and engorge their bellies. And forever will they hunt our people, until they have defeated all of its guardians, and enslaved all of the tribes to be their thralls and playthings for all time. And alone, none of us can stop it. We must join. We must be one purpose. Thus was my dream, my prophecy. Now, heed me finally, and act. The second stood again. A second I will speak. None can deny this prophecy comes true. Too many times has one of we shaman been brought to battle with a being of the shadows and slain, whereas before they would have fled at our advent. The size of our gathering speaks all the testimony required to be compelling. None can deny the dark things that now haunt the paths of dreams and spirit walkers. Who can doubt that there is an effort to destroy us by whatever force is yet to truly become? We must heed the eldest and act. A young man, but only of this current form, for his tattoos of blue showed the ages and wisdom of the soul within, stood. It had been this shaman who had previously demanded restraint and rebutted the prophecy to the verge of rudeness. He now somberly bowed to the eldest and spoke, twisting to see all one by one as he did so. I am proven wrong, and freely cede to the wisdom of the eldest and recant my previous words. The threat is real, but he never says how it meet it, Elder. It was my dream to present to the conclave. It is not for me to decide what to do with this wisdom. Aye, but we are shaman, and many of us walk the pathways and view the seas to divine what is and what may be. Despite the magnitude of the danger, I have never heard of a dream of prophecy that did not also include a solution, a hint, at least, on a way to adjust the now, to alter the future. What is the rest of it, Elder? What are you not telling us? Wanting us to come to all on our own? Is it that terrible? No matter what it is, now is the time to talk, to guide, for I think I speak for all when I say there is none now who doubt you. Are you to call a walking? Are we to march as one into the tides and hunt down these things? I nodded, seeing that all others, without exception, nodded in agreement also. All eyes went to the eldest. His eyes closed and he sighed. He looked into the fire at the center for a time before he responded. We must do more than this. If we go into the dream and hunt them, they will hide,
and our bodies will pass one by one due to exhaustion. When there are few of us left, they will pounce. We will be doing their work for them. Nor can it work, for there is no heart, no tower of these beings, no place that they call strong, for they do not exist yet. We would be hunting down minor beings who would then merge with each other faster, potentially making matters worse. Many joined me in looking downhearted, but the eldest spoke on. There was a way. In a myriad lines that I witnessed, there was but one. We must merge. We must not just act as one. We must be one. The things that are incubating now will be mighty enough to be dubbed gods. Without a being of equal power, of equal might, then they will surely kill us shepherds and enslave our flocks. We must become one.
How? Eldest, tell us how. The eldest just looked at me. Many eyes were drawn to me also. I knew these souls, so they knew it would take a minute or two, but realization dawned on me. I stood. There is a rare ritual we know in our tribe. It has only been performed a handful of times before in all of the time of our people, in all the time since the rise of the Blessed Ones, the shaman. I will explain. When two souls are entwined and travel the river of reincarnation together, sometimes they lose synchronicity, meaning they can be born and die generations apart. Sometimes they will harmonize their reincarnations for one life, but do not wish to chance this being separated again. In these rare circumstances, there is a ritual that has been used to merge the souls. But there is only one occurrence of it being used on more than two souls, and that was only 3. The principle, I suppose, is the same. It requires the souls to go into the ocean together, so most often those who undergo the ritual then take herbs that end their present incarnations at the same time. From there they merge beyond the veil. And yes, this is no folk tale. It is rare, but I know of 2 such beings presently incarnated. So we all die at the same time. Forgive me for asking a question only, but would this not then lead to a feeding frenzy? With all of our souls as one going into the other world, would it not just speed up matters and summon these horrors more quickly, as they devoured our souls? The elder interjected.
Perhaps. That is a fear. But as our friend here knows, the merged souls are often greater, more potent than the sum of their parts. If only half the number here were to merge, were to make it through, then the being they could create.
Again, he looks to me. I continue. A being, a result of the merger of the strongest souls of our race, would be like nothing witnessed before. When it did incarnate, its strength would be many times that of a normal man, its thoughts like quicksilver, its memory eternal. It would not be touched by the hand of illness, nor the grasp of death. Immortal, it would walk the lands for all of the ages of our tribes, and its mystic might would be the combination of every one of our individual talents and strengths, but augmented by factors. We are talking about making a god? No. An eternal guardian, a warrior of light to show the way, to lead and protect. A father for all tribes as one. A new man, an immortal champion of humanity that would have the power to fight the denizens of the darkest corners of the Sea of Souls, no matter how mighty they became. That would be the last time I would speak at a moot, for it was the last moot. There are many varying opinions and really excellent conjectures about the real genesis of the Emperor. Some say he was actually a weapon from the Dark Age of technology. Some say he is the greatest weapon of Ka himself, the last old one who was shattered into the Umbra when Slaanesh awoke. But for me, I go with the oldest interpretation, this one, as I find it the most compelling. I will never know if my little tale was how it began, how it was decided, but I cannot imagine the bones being much different, even if the meat and sauce is much sweeter, if it ever comes from the Black Library. But no matter the imagery, or exact details of which I have provided my own romanticized vision, this is how it happened. This is how the Emperor was brought into existence. But let me briefly recap what I tried to relate in the story, so we are certain of the causes of the Emperor. It can be argued many ways and from many angles what actually started the corruption of the Sea of the Souls, the Immaterium, the Warp. But it was true that dark things were moving. Humanity, no matter its genesis, the many theories we will go into at another time, developed as we know. But where the world of Warhammer is different to our world is that in humanity was a gene that allowed them to access the warp, the Sea of Souls, the Psyker gene. These souls, much like Eldar, would be aware after death and would be able to reincarnate into new children and retain all of the experience and memories of their previous lives. They were blessed with magical abilities, basically, all stemming from their connection to the Sea of Souls, the Immaterium, the Warp. So the hunter-gatherers of the Stone Age and before would have actual shaman amongst them, ones who could actually walk the astral plane, could heal, could see the possible twists and pathways to potential futures. They truly were psychic. At the time of the change for humanity, between Stone and early Bronze Age, as settlements began to develop, humanity seemed to lose some natural connection to the universe, and the shaman became more rare. That is how some see things. In other reports, the one I prefer here for the story element, and what I choose to present as the thing I think most likely, is that this was also added to by the changing and darkening nature of the warp. As the energies of the warp were slowly changed, it could not be ignored or denied that humanity had a huge effect on it. Perhaps the Eldar are more bright and shining in their souls, but they are also directed in other ways and had their own gods. Their power was directed towards those. Humanity? It loved and hated, made war and made peace, experienced all of the full range of emotions, and did not have the same spirits as the Eldar. Their tumultuous passions began to feed dark entities in the warp, ones that had not gained sentience but were growing. Each act of cruelty, each act of hate would feed them. They incubated in the warp, but eventually would become the three dark powers that we know of as the Dark Gods of Chaos. Khorne, Nurgle, and Tzeentch. Slaanesh we will deal with at another time when discussing the introspective Eldar. The Great Three are made up of tiny energies that are their whole. They were like huge balls of id trying to grow instinctually, and their darkness would take many of the shaman over a short period of time. Hence did the two conjoining factors reduce the shaman over the entire world, in my opinion. But they did meet, as was shown. All shaman commit suicide as one and merge their souls to forge this new man. The Emperor is a living embodiment of the collected wisdom, wonder, and psychic might from the entire human race. It is why, for many long ages of humanity, there were no psychers despite their potential. For as I read the lore at this moment, the best and brightest, the greatest souls of humanity were taken from the mainstream forever and combined in the Emperor, the savior and protector of humanity, the new man. He is the defender of humanity, but some say that no individual can ever matter to him, for he was created to defend all of humanity against the dark gods, not to improve their lives. He was created to see the survival of the entire race, so could never see past that goal to the faces of the individuals he uses up in this great labor. He is the most powerful psyker the human race has ever known, but to maintain him 10,000 psykers must be sacrificed a day, a drop in the ocean, as the Imperium comprises 1 million worlds, many populated with billions in a single city. As stated, without the Emperor there is no Astronomicon, the lighthouse that allows all of the ships of the Imperium to navigate the warp. Without the Emperor to soul-forge his psychers, there would be scant mystic defences in the Imperium, no astropathic choirs to communicate between its strong places, and it surely would rapidly fall to chaos. The Emperor has not spoken, not moved, not walked, not eaten, not slept, not properly, in 10,000 years. So, this is how it began. In the future, we should look at the experiences, the actions, and the legends that surround the Emperor, the master of mankind, the new man. A journey that will take us throughout all of the ages of humanity, but we shall take our time. We shall visit the periods to try to gain a greater understanding of the actions of the Emperor, what he witnessed, and how this may have formed him. I hope you will join me for it then. I have been Baldermort, your faithful servant. If you have enjoyed this brief introduction to the genesis of the Emperor, then do please consider liking and subscribing. If you do, then please do press the notifications button. I would not want you to miss out. If you are a regular gentle listener and see the worth in what we are doing, then please do consider supporting us on Patreon, if funds permit. Now, no matter what you do today, do try to make some time for fun. Toodaloo.